I am reading from chapter 12, from Satu-Ra and the Children of Light. We were all exhausted and I soon was sound asleep. Several hours later I woke up after having a bad dream. Kate was fully dressed and sound asleep in the bed next to me. It was cool in the room. I got up quietly and spread a blanket over her as she slept. She moaned slightly but remained deeply asleep. I went out into the common area between the suite of rooms. I found Meg sitting there reading a book. I went in and sat down across from her. She glanced up at me and asked, "What's the matter? Can't sleep?" I shook my head and said, "Woke up with bad dreams. Thought I'd stay up a bit to shake 'em." Meg said, "I get those from time to time. Nothing worse than a nightmare to ruin your sleep." I sat there trying to shake the effects of the dream. After a few seconds, I decided to check on Gwen. I got up and went to peek in on her. She was lying there peaceful enough, but as I started to shut the door to her room, she quietly called out, "Daddy?" I paused and stepped back into the room. I softly said, "Go back to sleep, sweetheart. I was just checking on you." I saw her tiny form sit up in bed and she said, "I'm ready to get up." Without further coaxing, I went in and picked her up off the bed. We went into where Meg was sitting, and they started talking about the book Meg was reading. We were there for about 20 minutes when Gwen suddenly said, "Kaltar has returned. He is in his quarters getting cleaned up." "Perhaps you should allow him some privacy," I noted, only half kidding. Gwen gave me a sour look and said, "We should go and check on him." "I have no intention of bothering Kaltar in the middle of the night," I responded sternly. "We will see him tomorrow." Without further comment, Gwen folded space and was gone. Meg smiled at me and said, "No doubt she's your daughter." "She gets it from her mother," I responded sarcastically. Then I folded space and went after Gwen. I found her sitting in a large chair in Kaltar's room. She was sitting there calmly, but the Magi woman, Tirsa, wasn't quite as calm. I heard her say, "It's rude to appear in Kaltar's quarters unannounced." I could sense in the link that Gwen was getting ready to argue with Tirsa and cut it short, saying, "She's right. You should leave. It's the middle of the night." "I want to talk to Kaltar," Gwen asserted. "I'm not leaving till I know he's all right." "I'm fine," Kaltar called from the other room. He stepped out of the back bedroom, still wet from a shower. He was wearing sweatpants but no shirt. A large red gash ran down the boy's chest, but he appeared to be fine otherwise. In a hushed voice, Gwen said, "You took a ridiculous risk going after the beast alone like that. Promise me you won't do it again." "I won't allow to track you like that," Kaltar growled. He hesitated, and I could tell in the link he regretted his words. After a moment, he haltingly said, "I've been instructed not to repeat the response. The Rock and Medeas were both very vexed with me. I'm here to make sure it doesn't happen again," Tirsa noted. She glanced at Kaltar and said, "He can tend to react without thinking." "So they assigned you to watch over me," Kaltar observed sarcastically. "The person most likely to fling herself into combat at the drop of a hat." I could tell Kaltar was teasing the woman, but she seemed pretty miffed anyway. "I'm not the Magi that locked horns with the beast," Tirsa snapped back. "That's not a thing to joke about." "You're both safe now," I noted. "Let's just be thankful for that." Tirsa seemed unimpressed with the comment and folded space, departing in a huff. As soon as she was gone, Kaltar quietly said, "I apologize. Tirsa has been under a lot of stress lately." "She's in love with you," Gwen said. It was a simple observation, like "the sun is hot." Kaltar glanced up for a second and focused on Gwen as he said, "Yes, I suppose she is." He hesitated and then said, "I'm aware of the problem." Gwen's head tilted to one side and she asked, "You don't care that she loves you?" Kaltar had started to finish dressing. He stopped, looked at Gwen and said, "Yes, I care. I suppose Tirsa is one of my best friends." "But you don't love her," repeated Gwen. "No," agreed Kaltar. "Not as I do my beloved April." Gwen seemed to take the comment in and assess what Kaltar had said. Then she said, "I feel bad for Tirsa." "So do I," Kaltar quietly observed. He paused for a second and then asked, "Do you need something?" "I just want to know you're all right," said Gwen. "We'll leave you alone if you wish." Kaltar hesitated for a moment and then said, "I'll be fine. I just need to rest up a bit." Right then an alarm started sounding. A voice came into the link and said, "We have a large number of ships on an incoming trajectory for Cygni Arcturus. All on-duty personnel report to battle stations. I repeat, all hands to battle stations." I instantly thought of the remains of the old Guardian fleet floating disabled in space. Any force willing to fight us here would be formidable. Outside in the hallway, I could hear running footsteps. A second alarm began to wail in the distance, and I knew we were in trouble. I glanced at Gwen and she said, "I know. Go back to our quarters and stay out of sight till this is over." I nodded in agreement. Even as I did so, Kaltar folded space and was gone. Considering recent events, I decided to follow him if I could. I arrived at the fleet's planetary command center right behind Kaltar. A number of large siege weapons ringed the surface of Signaturus. Over 500 of them were very capable of defending the planet under normal circumstances. I could tell at once this wasn't normal. The command center is part of a system of space stations built to control the surface weapons and augment their firepower. A series of huge video screens showed the current position of everything in space within 4 light years of the planet. On the center of the screen, several solid masses appeared headed right for the planet. The first solid radar image was made up of meteors. There must have been thousands of them, many over a mile across. Right behind them was a large fleet of ships. It was obvious they were sent by the darkness. The rocks would leave nothing but rubble in this star system, and the enemy fleet would ensure the job was finished. As soon as we arrived, the Magi named Tursa appeared. Right behind her was Tucker. I saw the looks of horror on their faces and knew they shared my assessment of the situation. Tursa's first words were, "What are you going to do, Kaltar?" I saw the boy's eyes fly from screen to screen, trying to find an out. I could sense the desperation in the link. We were all going to die, and we knew it. Without hesitation, I saw Kaltar focus his thoughts and reach out toward the oncoming disaster. At that moment, the planet's defenses started to kick in. The primary systems are railguns built to fire 1-ton hardened projectiles at close to the speed of light. The system would work great against ships, not so well against the trillion tons of rock as it rained down on the planet. I heard a loud thump and knew the station we were on had just fired around into space. Tursa could see Kaltar getting ready to do something, and I heard the angst in her voice as she said, "Don't overextend yourself, Kaltar. We need to get out of here." "I'm not going anywhere," Kaltar replied softly. "I was afraid of that," Tursa said under her breath. Our fleet was almost dispersed. They had fled to prearranged locations. They would regroup and return within less than 10 minutes as per their battle plans. By then, there would be nothing left of Signaturus. A static charge was building where we stood. I glanced at Kaltar and Tursa. His eyes were glowing with an intense white light, and I could tell something was getting ready to occur. Abruptly, Tursa screamed, "Don't do it, Kaltar!" There was a bright flash, and Kaltar dropped to his knees. Tursa grabbed his shoulder, or he would have pitched forward onto the floor. I could tell in my scans that the boy was in rough shape. On the video monitors, half the oncoming mass of rock seemed to vanish off the screen. I heard Kaltar whisper, "I've done this before." He was on his knees trying to get up. I could see blood running from his mouth. He was dying. I could sense it in the link. He wasn't recovered enough for this. Tucker looked over at me, and I could see he was desperate as I was. My mind reached out again in the scan, trying to find a miracle. As I did, Kaltar lurched to a standing position and prepared to act again. The entire scene verged on insanity. Thousands of solid projectiles were thundering past us from the planet's surface as we floated here in space, waiting to be obliterated.